Breaking news from Venezuela. Christian pastors are walking free tonight after years of imprisonment under the Maduro regime. This is the story of faith, courage, and an unprecedented rescue operation that changed everything. For over a decade, Venezuela's socialist government systematically targeted Christian leaders who dared to speak truth to power. Pastor Ender Uribari in Caracas, along with dozens of other faithful servants, faced surveillance, intimidation, and imprisonment simply for preaching the gospel and caring for their communities. These weren't political prisoners in the traditional sense. They were shepherds whose only crime was feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, and offering hope to a nation in despair. While Venezuela's economy collapsed and millions fled the country, these pastors stayed behind, ministering to those who couldn't escape. Tonight we'll trace how prayers turned into action, how communities kept faith in secret, and how a daring operation finally reopened doors that had been closed for years. Visually, imagine claymation vignettes introducing each pastor, worn hands, patched Bibles, quiet kitchens where secret prayers were said. Our narrator voice carries their stories from whispered fear to burgeoning hope, setting the stage for what comes next. The persecution intensified after Maduro's disputed 2024 election victory. Church services were monitored, sermons censored, and pastors began disappearing in the night. Families woke to empty beds and unanswered prayers, not knowing if their loved ones were alive or dead. Surveillance cameras, once used to guard public plazas, were repurposed to watch ministries. Congregation members whispered scripture verses in doorways, careful with every word. On January 3rd, everything changed. President Trump authorized a decisive military operation that would reshape Venezuela's future and answer the prayers of countless believers worldwide. In the early morning hours, as Pastor Uribari heard explosions echo across Caracas, he immediately sent a prayer request to his church's 24-hour WhatsApp group. Within minutes, his congregation was on their knees, interceding for their nation. They had no idea their prayers were about to be answered in the most dramatic way possible. Claymation sequences show empty church pews, then flickers of light as congregations gather online and in kitchen tables to pray. The tension builds a nation on edge, faith communities holding fast until the operation begins to unfold. The operation was swift and surgical. American forces targeted Venezuela's largest military complex while simultaneously moving to secure detention facilities where political and religious prisoners were held. The mission had two primary objectives: capture Nicolas Maduro and liberate those in prison for their faith and political beliefs. As controlled explosions lit up the Caracas skyline, special forces teams moved through prison corridors, calling out the names of pastors and Christian leaders who had been locked away for months, some for years. Inside the dark cells, there were moments of disbelief. Men and women who had memorized psalms still whispered them, but many had resigned themselves to silence. The sudden sound of boots, the metallic click of keys, and the warm sweep of light across barred windows brought a stunned, trembling hope. Claymation close-ups highlight trembling hands, tear-filled eyes, and tightly held rosaries loosening as doors opened. Pastor Miguel Rodriguez was among the first to emerge, blinking in the unfamiliar light of freedom. His first words weren't about his suffering, but a prayer of thanksgiving for God's deliverance. One by one, 87 prisoners walked free that day, some clutching worn Bibles, others embracing fellow prisoners as family. The operation combined precise military coordination with a deep human tenderness. Medics tending wounds, chaplains praying over trembling shoulders, translators helping them understand their immediate safety and next steps. Many freed were pastors and Christian leaders, but others were simply citizens who had dared to protest the stolen election. They emerged not as broken victims, but as testimonies to the power of faith under fire. Emotional claymation montage of family reunions, wives embracing husbands, children running to fathers, elderly parents holding their adult children. The clay animation captures pure joy and relief in every molded expression. The scenes of reunion were nothing short of miraculous. Wives who hadn't seen their husbands in months collapsed in tears of joy. Children ran into the arms of fathers they thought they'd never see again. Claymation church interiors fill with celebrating congregation members, hands raised in worship, some weeping, others singing aloud. The pastor they thought lost forever stands at the pulpit, overwhelmed with emotion as incense of gratitude fills the air. Franklin Graham responded, calling the operation an answer many had prayed for. Claymation representation of President Trump in the Oval Office shows decisive leadership and relief across a nation and in faith communities abroad. News outlets reported that at least 87 prisoners were released amid U.S. pressure, while advocacy groups continue to track hundreds still detained for political reasons. This moment is both a rescue and a reminder, a breakthrough for religious freedom, but not the end of the story. Church leaders are calling for prayers of thanksgiving and prayers for those still missing. Evangelical organizations and international human rights groups are coordinating relief, legal aid, and support for families rebuilding their lives. For Venezuelan Christians who lived under Maduro's shadow, this is a pivotal moment that could reshape religious life, reopening churches, restoring ministries, and renewing public witness. As claymation fades to a hopeful skyline, remember this thread: faith held firm in secret. Communities never stopped praying, and when action came, freedom followed. If this story moved you, stay informed, pray for Venezuela, and support organizations helping to rebuild lives on the ground. This is a chapter in a larger story of faith and freedom, one that will keep unfolding in the days ahead.